This is going to be a kind of different video than I usually do. I recently asked you guys, if I were to make a video where I show my process of building a roller coaster, would you rather see a speed build time-lapse or perhaps a tutorial? Most of you voted for the tutorial, so this is what's going to happen today. I'm going to show you the very basics of how to build a roller coaster in NoLimits 2. This video in particular is going to very much be just how to actually use the program and how to get things done and how to finish a coaster. So I'm not going to go into a specific model or specific elements or so, but if you want to see that, let me know in the comments below and I may just make another tutorial in the future on a specific part of the game. But for this video's purpose, this is very much for beginners to NoLimits 2, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Without further ado, let's get freaking started. Once you've started out NoLimits, you will... Hello. Once you've started up NoLimits, you will get this screensaver, awesome front page thing, and you will have the following option. You can hit play, which is for actually riding and looking at coasters running. Editor, which is what we're going to be using mostly today. Setup is basically just your settings. Quit is obviously the most fun part of the game. The settings you can mess with yourself. It's everything in regards to just the controls and the sound and display and details, how you export videos and such. To actually start building a roller coaster, you're going to want to hit editor. Then you get it put into this very old 2000s like screen. To build a coaster, you're gonna have to start a park. In order to actually open a park, you move up into Files, hit New. Here you can choose where on your computer that park will be saved, and of course the name. In this instance, I'm just gonna name it Tutorial. There we go. You just confirm and it loads shit. Boom! We are now officially in a park. The first thing to note is there are several ways where you can actually see how you're going to build things. Up in the corner here, I'm right now at perspective, which is basically a 3D view. You just use WASD like normal FPS shooters to move around, and of course the mouse. As you can see, there's also top, and there is, what is this, front, back and left and right. They're all side views, and then there's track view, and well, I don't have a track right now. As you can see, there's also a grid here on the side and top views, which you can turn on and off up here in the corner. The same you can do with snap, which is basically where whatever you're building is gonna sort of link to the grid. You can decide yourself how big the snap is gonna be, and basically the way you do that is go into preferences, where you can set the snap distance. You can look at overlays, background colors. We're gonna stay in top view for now because that is the most decent way to start building your coaster. In order to actually start a coaster, you go into the coaster part up here and you hit new coaster. And already you have to give it a name because marketing is important. We're gonna give it a very holy and Christian name. There we go. And now you still don't have a coaster. In order to choose what kind of coaster you want to build, you go into coaster properties. This is basically where you find all the overall settings for your coaster. Go into style and you will see the list of the many different coasters you can build. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to go with an infinity coaster because it can do literally everything. Here you choose how worn the track is going to look, brand new or rusted. Just for funsies, let's choose rusted. Rail type, standard or striped. Striped is basically where it looks like the paint has been rubbed off by the wheel, so there's like a stripe. Mode is basically where you choose the hard lining. Now the hard lining is the rotation of the track. Basically, if you have the center of rails, the cars will rotate around the track, and if you choose hard lining, the track will rotate around the cars. For most coasters, you're just gonna want to hit hardline of current coaster style. It's only if you build like CCIs or old aero coasters or something like that that you want to go with center of rails. Here you can also choose if it's a shuttle coaster or not. For this tutorial, we're going to go with a standard closed circuit coaster. In trains, you choose how many cars there are per train and how many trains you want. We're just going to go with a standard 4-row infinity coaster thing. You can just run backwards or... Honestly, I don't know what this does. In colors, that's pretty obvious. We can choose our colors, which I'm gonna do right now because I hate building in plain white. That looks good. Scripts, I don't know what the fuck this is. Statistics, this is basically where you see the height and the length of your coaster. Click OK to save your settings and then go into track. Now to actually build the coaster, you start by choosing Start Vertex. This is the first point of your coaster. So once I click once, I have this line I can move around. Unlike Planet Coaster and Parkitect and such, we do not build in pieces. Instead, we build in vertices. So here you basically choose where is the end of the track going to be. And as you can see, I'm using Snap. That's why it's so laggy. Like, I'm going to go over and choose this portion. And bam, we have our first track. Of course, it's lying on the ground right now. And this is where I quickly want to teach you that if you go into preferences, you also have the option of just looking at every single perspective at once instead of having to switch between them. If you go into preferences, you can choose from single view to double view, or as I always build in, quad view. Hit OK, and bam, you have different perspectives. We're gonna hold left click on the mouse down to select everything here and then move it up. Of course, you can also choose one, hold down Control, and click on the other one, and you will also have chosen all of it. Now I'm actually gonna go and make this a bit longer, like this, and that looks fit for our station. Now let me show you how it actually works with the track, and say, okay, we wanna go up now because we have a lift hill. Oh, well, that's odd. Now in this case, we're building with a flat track. If you actually want to see more of how it looks, you can go into style settings and go down into spine type, and you can actually choose what kind of track it is. I'm going to choose 3-tube right now. As you can see, it is the normal 3-tube like Gerstlauer track now. And as you can see, the track is not straight, even though I wanted to just go straight up. Why is that? That is because NoLimits works by using vertices. That means it's not going to follow the points specifically. Instead, the points work as an average. But as you can see here, the more I move it, the more the track is going to try to align up with that. So in order to fix our little problem here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this point and move it down here again, so we have them straight here. Then I'm going to take another add a vertex here and go up. Now, of course, it's still curving a little bit here, but this is where strict comes in. If you double click on a vertex, you will get the vertex panel. Here you can select strict. If you select strict, the track will always attempt to go straight through the vertex. As you can see, if I move it back and forth, it will always try to remain straight until the strict point comes. And as we can see in track view, that makes for a very controlled curve. Now, in order to do the same with a lift hill here, we're just going to take another vertex and just add it up to around here. This is basically the same point as this down here, meaning in order to make this straight, we also double click this vertex and choose strict for this one. Then we can of course move it up and down in regards to how we want the curve, and then look at track view to see how good it is. And this looks pretty good for me. Now, so far we've only built track, but how do we actually show what kind of track we want it to be? The way we do this is we add a type separator. The type separators basically show the ends of where different types of tracks are. So let's say we want to make a station. So let's say I set one here and here. Now notice that the track type is also going to change. That's completely normal. I'll quickly go into style settings and just change that back. And so as you can see, when I click, we have different sections here now that these type separators make. If I then click on the one in between the two type separators and I go into section type, I can then choose what kind of thing it's going to be. There's transport, which is basically like kicker wheels or launches, brakes of course, lift, and then a station. Storage is also a thing you can do, but I'm not an expert on that. I've not used that myself. But for this purpose, we're going to choose station. The train is now on here because the train will always sit on the station while you're building. But if we turn off grid here, we can very clearly see the station is a different color. It's brown instead of blue. And that's how you recognize the different types. They're different colors. Now, I actually think this station is a little too large, so I'm just going to make it a tad smaller. And then we can choose this entire section here to be a lift. Now for stations and brakes and lifts, we can select it and we can go into type settings. In here, you can basically adjust the speed, where the motor is going to be, what type of lift it's going to be. I'm just going to set it to 10 kilometers an hour and then keep it all at that. Up at the top here, we're going to basically do the same as we did down here. In order to create the curve, we're going to make an end vertex. Gonna make one more here and then one down like this. Then I'm gonna choose this one and say strict. I'm already gonna start to make the drop now because that's just the easiest way to do it. Now we can look at track view and see how smooth it is, and as you can see, it is very bumpy. It is not incredibly smooth at all. So in that way, you can try to move the vertices around a little bit to try to see what works. I'm just going to finish the rest of the drop here. And this is just by adding more vertices. This is all about practice in regards to how good it's going to look. This is a terrible drop, I think. Now, of course, we don't want this entire section to be a lift hill. So we choose another type separator and set it around here. And it's automatically going to make the rest into a normal track type. This drop is not smooth at all. So how do we actually smooth a coaster? Just like before, we can choose the different vertices and then we can go over into element. In element, the most important part here is depump vertices. If you choose this, it will start a smoothing process and smooth out the track as much as possible. Now, sometimes this can ruin shape, but for most of the time, it's gonna make a very, very smooth coaster. Now, something I've noticed here is that the top of the lift hill is a little too tight in regards to the entrance. So the way I fix that is actually just by moving the strict vertex a little more up, and it's gonna make a much more even top of the lift hill. If you want to actually make a turn like we do now, we can go over into the top view and start moving the cursor around in a turn like this. Now that we've finished our turn, we can then see over in front view that all the vertices that we've just made the turn with are just at the same level. This looks scuffed as fuck. So this is where you can then move each vertex to your liking. I'm not trying to necessarily make anything good here. I'm just trying to make something that will actually go into the station again. We now have a solid turn here. Once again, I want to select all the vertices here, and I would very much like to go into element, depump vertices, and smooth this bastard. Now if we go into the track view, we can then see that this is indeed a very smooth turn. But what about banking? How do we make some banking? Banking is once again in track, and it is with the add roll option. Let's go into top view and just select a random piece of track right here. If we double click the roll point, we can then adjust how many angles it should be rolled at. In order to see it best, I'm going to go into perspective, and where is it? There it is. And then, of course, you can just adjust the degrees to your liking. Now, you may be noticing now that I have a bunch of green and yellow lines. What are those? Well, those lines are the G-forces. In this part of the screen, you can choose what kinds of things you want to show on each of these screens. We can also choose speed. If you hold your mouse over a specific portion, the bottom of your screen will actually show the measurement. I don't know what the hell these things are, but I mean, they look cool. There's blocks for El Toro Orion, and then of course the spline again, which is where the train itself is going to be. Now, as you can see here, the lines are going to the right. This means there are lateral forces that are going to the right. So what I can do is I can just add some banking, and the lateral G-forces go away. At the bottom here, we can see the positive G-forces. And over here at the drop, we can see that there are basically no lines, meaning that this is almost pretty much 0 Gs, aka floater airtime. Now, another thing you can do is also, if you don't want to sit and adjust the degrees yourself, you can choose no lat G-force. That basically means that there's going to be 0 lateral G-forces on the exact point of the roll point. It'll figure out an exact degree for the track, which will have no lateral G-forces. If I choose that, it will adjust itself and there are no laterals. Now down at the bottom of the drop here, this portion of the track has affected this part. How do we prevent that? We basically just add more roll points. This is our previous roll point. We just add one before, more no lat Gs. We see there are a little bit of lateral Gs here. We can always add one here and just see how smooth that is. And honestly, it looks pretty solid. And now at the bottom of the drop though, it starts to bank towards the right for some reason. That is because the track will always try to be as smooth as possible, meaning that it will balance itself out. We don't want any banking on the drop, or the lift hill for that matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down before it starts turning, and we're going to watch the yellow spline for that. Going to select a point and have it at 0 degrees. Then just like with the vertices, we're going to choose strict. So it will not be banking before this point at all. Now, if we move it a little up here right before it actually starts banking, we can see that it is very snappy and not smooth at all. This is where you can adjust like how close to the turn itself it's going to be. For the rest of this turn, we're just going to add some more roll points, make sure that the G-forces are balanced. Just for fun, actually, you know what? Let's make this an outer bank turn. So around here, we're going to do something like that, I guess. This is not going to be realistic. I'm just making shit for fun right now. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks terrible. Let's do that. And so this is basically how you build in NoLimits. There are more options like insert vertex, where you put a vertex in between other vertices. There's also the style separator, which separates the style like I showed you, with style settings where you can set the track type like 2-tube or 3-tube. This is also where you choose if you want any catwalks and catwalks with lights. You can choose individual colors, you can choose tunnels. I'm also, just for fun, gonna make a quick vertical loop here. Oh boy, this is so bad. Now we actually want to make a brake run. In order to do that, we're going to make sure that the end of the track has a vertex on line with the station. We're also going to go to this vertex right here and make a line here. We're gonna choose this one and select strict. Most brake runs are slightly tilted. They often go a little down. So this is why I'm basically doing the same as I did with the lift hill here, but at a much more gentle angle. Selecting stricts here in order to make a form of curve. This needs to be higher. Once we've done that, what we're gonna wanna do is select these two ends and then in track, click connect. And now we basically have the end of the track and the beginning of the brake run. As you can see, it is not smooth at all. And one of the reasons for that is, besides the fact that I haven't smoothed it out yet, we also get this special roll point that is in form of a ugly pyramid thing that is penetrating this vertex right now. This thing always appears once you connect two dots, and it always appears at a horrible point. I do not want this here because I cannot move it around. So what I always like to do is I go down to here where there's not going to be any banking before or after anyway, and I'll just choose this here on the brake run and select split up. Then I can choose these 2 points, connect them again, and it will look exactly the same, except this roll point will now be there. Of course, I still want a roll point that says 0 strict here, so that we have no banking once we move into the brake run. I'm gonna select these roll points now and then smooth them out. And it looks something like this. Of course, it's still not entirely smooth, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna choose a roll point, and we're gonna select it shortly before, and then basically just adjust it with a few degrees until it looks as smooth as possible. Once again, we select type separators, and then we go over here and basically mark out where we want the brake run. Go into section type, choose brake, type settings to basically adjust if you want it to be a friction brake, magnetic brake, or an invisible brake. Is it a block brake or a trim brake? A trim brake will of course do exactly as trims do in real life. They'll just slow it down. Now the speed here works weird. The speed limit is not the limit that it will slow down to. If we select 10 kilometers an hour and then we choose a hysteria, this thing at 5 kilometers an hour, it basically adds that 5 onto the 10, meaning that if it is going faster than 15 kilometers an hour, then the brakes will kick in. But if it goes 14 kilometers an hour, so less than this 5 on top of the 10, it will not slow down. If it does slow down, it will also then slow down to 5 less than the 10. Or if we choose 7, then 7 less than the 10, meaning it will go down to 3 kilometers an hour, and then the brakes will let go as soon as it hits that limit. Here we can choose how fast it's going to brake. It's an incredibly short brake run, so I'm going to select something like 1.2 Gs. Right now I've chosen trim brakes. I'm just going to go into block brake. If you want to have more than one train on the track, then a train can hold still there. In the trigger, you can choose where it will start braking. You can also choose to have transport devices on your brake run, kicker wheels for example. The speed works just the same as the lift hill, and you can also choose launch, which is basically where it would accelerate at a specific speed to a specific speed. I don't know why you would want to do this on a brake run, but you can. I'm not gonna enable transport devices, and now we basically have a complete coaster. I have no idea if it's gonna make this. Oh, just barely.
Nice.
Now the final thing for a coaster at this stage is of course the supports. There is a supports tab up here, and here you can basically choose to make your own supports. I will not go into depth with making supports here, so again, if you want a tutorial on that, let me know. Basically it works by drawing lines, so there are nodes here that you can choose, and then you can add a beam between them, and that's a support. Then there is a supports panel that basically chooses which type of support it is. But for this tutorial only, we're basically just going to use the prefab panel. In here you can choose one of 3 dots and then just choose a specific type of support. For this coaster, we're going to go down and choose a track default. We're just going to choose the double, and then we click on add prefab down here. We're just going to add them around. It's not very important for this tutorial. As you can see, they look a little different depending on where we put them. I am not putting them realistic right now. I'm just putting them however I see fit right now. But you can do a whole lot of things with supports. You can make them incredibly detailed, beautiful, very custom as well. There's also a wooden generator tab if you want to make wooden supports. Here you just choose generate final. You choose which kind of wooden supports you want. For example, the steeple is like GCI. You can choose if there's going to be handrails and catwalks, how much space is going to be between the wooden beams, and then you would hit OK, and it would create your wooden supports. But, you know, we're not going to do that here. Finally, we want to save our coaster. And also, how do we test it? You go into coaster, and you choose freeze, and the program starts to render the coaster. here is our ultra realistic, super incredible, fascinating, amazing roller coaster made by Gerstlauer that I totally did not design. In order to actually ride it, you go into File and Leave Editor. Make sure you have saved before this by choosing Save or Control S. Now we're in the front screen again, and we still have it as our background, but we can see that there is a cross down by play. That's because it still has the park loaded even though we are out here. So if we hit editor, we would get straight into here as well again. If we leave editor and click play, we will get right into the specific coaster. I'm gonna hit the P button to pause it, but if you hit F7, you get into this part where you can basically choose the field of view of your ride. I always use the maximum for off rides and then around here right under the N for on rides. Now, right now we're just in a seat. If you actually want to change the view, you can hit the E key on your keyboard. If I hit it once, I get into fly view, and this is basically like the perspective view. If you want to speed up and down, you can hit plus and minus to go up and down in fast forwarding speed. I'm actually very curious if it's gonna make this loop. Please, 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 please. Yes, it makes it! We have a successful full circuit roller coaster. If I hit E again, there are several different types of perspectives, of course, that we can look at that. Usually when I record, I go into what's called flyby view. This is basically where it's like a mounted POV instead of a ride POV, and I can move it around. I always move it down here to the track. Now the coaster has finished now, and it's gonna wait a long time before it runs again. So if you hit F4 and hit the control panel, you can click reset and it just starts over. And here we have the coaster itself. I just want to say this is just the best coaster I've ever made. I've never made anything as incredible as this. All my intimate gigas and mock rides and all of that, screw that. This is like peak right here, dude. What an amazing outer bank. Such airtime or something. But yeah, keep in mind, this is like a very terribly designed coaster. This was just to show you how the game actually worked. Even the loop is horrible. Oh my god. Look at this. The G-forces here are just insane. But it works, and that is how you build a coaster. It takes a lot of practice to get good at NoLimits. And I would still not say I'm necessarily good. I mean, I'm still finding shit that's just so incredible on YouTube. But that's the beauty of it. Just like the name suggests, there are no limits in this game. There's so much experimentation you can do in this game. Now, this, fellas, was the first coaster that I ever made. This is absolutely fucking horrid. And as you can see, I made a launch, a zero-G roll. Oh my god. Oh, this is even worse than the one we made in the tutorial. Oh god. Oh no. Oh no. It's okay if you think you're really, really bad in the beginning, because it will definitely get better. I mean, just keep making coasters, keep learning and looking at actual POVs to figure out how to make certain coasters. Look at this thing. Look at this. This is like the ultimate head chopper. I hope you enjoyed. This is the first tutorial I've ever made, so I hope it was somewhat okay. Let me know if there's something I missed, if there's something specific you want to know, if there's a specific thing you want to see. Take care, boys. Bye!